Hello and welcome to the big fight. The election of the president this time has been an unprecedented mess, marked by political intrigue and sparring. While it now seems certain that nuclear physicist Dr. Abdul Kalam will become India's next president, there is still a controversy that is simmering. It raises the big question today: have political parties devalued the office of the Indian Rashtrapati? And what should be the criteria for electing someone to stay in Rashtrapati Bhavan? That's the debate on the big fight. On our panel, Mr. A.B. Bardhan. He's been at the heart of all that's been happening in the last month, CPI General Secretary. Our second panelist from the Vajpayee government, Mr. Rajiv Pratap Rudy. He is Minister of State for Commerce in the government from the Bharatiya Janata Party. Our third panelist, Dr. Abhishek Singhvi, former Additional Solicitor General. He's also the Congress Party's spokesperson. My two co-questioners, Aarti Jarat, Associate Editor with the Indian Express, and Vinod Sharma, Chief of Bureau of the Hindustan Times. The rules of the big fight, the same as always: 6 rounds, including one audience round. Each speaker gets 90 seconds to make opening remarks. The other 2 speakers get 30 seconds for refutation. A buzzer comes on when their time is up. Well, to open up our debate, have political parties devalued the office of the Rashtrapati? What should be the criteria for choosing a President of India? It's Mr. A.B. Bardhan, CPI General Secretary. Mr. Bardhan.
I do not think, you see, we should generalize like that. Politicians, political parties, everyone from this side to that side. I have a feeling that this time, the way the whole process has been carried out in nominating a president for the contest of the president has been faulty. And something has been done which really devalues the whole thing, but not by all parties. I would particularly blame the ruling party. Not because I am in the opposition and I blame the ruling party always. Nothing of that sort. I was among the first to meet the Prime Minister on his invitation. And it was told in the press also that very same day that in the given situation in this country, it would be very good if you can have a consensus on the president. And I can tell you that Mr. Vajpayee agreed to this proposition that there ought to be a consensus rather than a contest in the context of Indo-Pakistan, Gujarat, economic crisis, and so on, so many other things. That was agreed. Of course, we had a discussion about 1 or 2 names. I do not want to go into that. But that's neither here nor there, because after all, when I talk of consensus, it is not as if this particular man should be chosen. But then what happened was that nothing took place for quite some time. Then we were one day told that there can be a consensus on Mr. Krishnakant. I am stating a fact. This was communicated also to another major opposition party, none other than the Congress. And it so happened, that the leader of the Congress even congratulated Mr. Krishnakant for having been chosen. And we were prepared to have a consensus. Let me tell you now, as a matter of fact, we conveyed this.
On Mr. Krishnakant?
On Mr. Krishnakant at that stage. At that stage, because we thought that he is a vice president, he can be elevated. That type of thing has happened so many times in the past. But within 4 hours, Mr. Krishnakant, having been told first that you are a nominee, was told that you are not a nominee. Then came the question of Alexander. That, of course, we did not expect. And nobody told us before. It was announced in the press. So we all came together. And it so happened that from the Congress, People's Front, we were all against Mr. Alexander being there. Again, after some time, the next day we are told, after we had gone and met Mr. Narayanan, that was the first time we met Mr. Narayanan and requested him. He kept all the proprieties. He never said yes.
So your time is up. You have a long story, of course, to tell me.
Not a long story. I am saying then Mr. Alexander is dropped the next day. So it is as if they are all pawns. And then comes the name of...
Cloak and dagger politics you're playing. You're treating presidents as pawns, Mr. Rudy.
I want to understand from Mr. Vardhan when he says the process was faulty. Now, would he like to define what is the process for appointment of a President of India, number 1. Number 2, when he talked about consensus, what is the device and way by which we can come to a consensus? He says that they agreed to, when there was no name floated or agreed or concluded, he says Krishnakant was agreed. I have very high regards for all names which have figured. But the process of consensus is not agreeing to the proposition of the left or the Congress. The proposal was there, it was in, and so forth and so on. Why there was so much of a confusion? Why was so much of a mudslinging? Why did they walk up to the President of India and say, you become the candidate? Was that the process to conduct a consensus?
Mr. Bardhan.
Both his questions mean the same thing.
Oh.
Does he deny that Mr. Krishnakant was approached? Does he deny that Mr. Alexander was approached?
I would
Does
like
he
to
deny that
repeat
Mr. Alexander
again.
was later told that you are not the candidate?
I would
Are you not dealing with all these people as if they are pawns in the
Again,
game?
if there was not a consensus, there could be a presumption
he-
that the name
but you
proposed
have not
from this
answered
side-
your question.
No, what I want to say today,
Let me
I would
answer
like
your
to
question
yes,
first.
what has been coming out, even if there was a proposal of Mr. Alexander or Mr. Krishnakant, and it was not agreeable to this extent, you had no business or right to propose a name. We could have proposed a third name. We could have proposed a fourth name.
I of
You
course
don't have the. You are not there
seriously
to
object
decide.
to this
the name.
language that we have no business to propose a name.
No,
they
that
have
is-
all the business to propose
That is
names.
because as the best part is, in the political process of this country, every political party has desired to have a person as a constitutional head.
So therefore
He has
they have a
had
business
certain.
and
He
they
has
have a
had
right.
No, he's
certain-
saying you don't have the veto right.
not
Effectively,
saying
he's saying you don't have a
cannot
veto
take
right
it
to
for a
decide
veto
who you
and
will
then
not
say
have
that
as
this is
president.
my proposal.
No, but let
And
me
what
now-
happens next?
Let me now answer that part
Mr.
of the
Rajdeep,
question.
I would like to
I would
conclude,
like to
Ahmed.
know, is this the consensus that Mr. Prime Minister then subsequently rings us up and tells us that we have chosen this name? I mean Dr. Kalam, a very eminent
No,
person,
just a second, just a
respectable
second.
person, and then says, you kindly agree to this.
No, my
So
question
we
is.
told him that you could have called us, we could have discussed these names, 2 or 3. This is not the way of a consensus that you tell us that you have decided.
So you have no problem with Kalam, you have only a problem with the manner in which you were,
So
you
he
believe you
becomes
were
only-
imposed
he
the name
becomes
on
a
you.
nominee of only the NDA. In that
No,
case,
the basic-
other parties are then supposed to fall in line.
Mr. Singhvi, you want to get a quick word in?
Answer to your question is an unqualified yes as far as the ruling party is concerned. Let me be equally specific from the point of view of the Congress. I think there are 3 points here. Firstly, the suggestion of the name of Dr. Alexander was unilateral completely. Now nobody is suggesting that there has to be a consensus. Be there a consensus or be there a contest, I think the process required certainly a greater degree of all-round consultation. After unilaterally suggesting Dr. Alexander, on Saturday the 8th in the morning, the highest functionary of the PMO talked to a very high functionary of the Congress, the names are well known in the press, and said, we will agree, if you are not agreeing to Dr. Alexander and you are proposing Mr. Narayanan, we will agree to Mr. Krishnakant. 3 hours later, inexplicably and mysteriously, that name is withdrawn. And with apologies, the same Congress functionary is informed by the same PMO official that no, that name stands withdrawn. Then again Dr. Alexander is suggested. On Sunday, the NDA fails to agree on Dr. Alexander and the meeting of the NDA is indefinitely postponed. Thereafter, Mr. Naidu makes Mr.
Basically,
Pramod
cloak
Mahajan
and dagger
travels to Mr. Naidu.
subterfuge. We'll come into the details through the program, but subterfuge and cloak and dagger politics seem to have marked the election of the president.
By saying that this has been devalued
Okay.
by this process.
Now,
Aarti.
I have a question for both Mr. Bardhan and Mr. Singhvi. You know, you're talking about consensus. You wanted the government to, evolve a consensus. But you went ahead and approached Mr. Narayanan to stand for a second term, even though you knew that the NDA did not want to give him a second term. So you yourself are breaking this whole thing of
may I ask
consensus.
This was, madam, after we had agreed to a consensus on Krishnakant.
May I answer that 2 things. One, the name of Dr. Alexander was proposed as a unilateral suggestion. So therefore we said you have proposed it, and that name was stuck with for a long time. So we proposed Mr. Narayanan. Secondly, when there was an agreement and convergence on Mr. Krishnakant, that was rescinded and they went back to Alexander. When we reiterated
So
Mr.
do you
Narayanan.
both agree that there has
Had
been...
there been a process
Do you
earlier?
both agree that there has been a cloak and dagger manner in which
In
this
any
is...
case, no
you have gone to
asserted
Mr.
consensus.
Narayanan on your own and requested him to be president. They have floated various names. So you talk of consensus, but practice the politics of subterfuge.
No, but please remember, they floated the names. We went to him later. There is a time factor.
I have a question of both Mr. Bardhan and Mr. Rudy. Mr. Bardhan, one of your erstwhile partners who fell out just the other day, Mr. Mulayam Singh Yadav, his party was very much part of the delegation that called on President Narayanan.
Quite right.
And thereafter, his party never cared to call back on President Narayanan again to tell him that he doesn't happen to be the candidate anymore.
Quite right.
Don't you think that the left parties, which were leading virtually the People's Front, are as much responsible for this kind of a slight or an affront to the President of India? Because you should have ensured that at least this man went and told the President.
I am amused by what you are asking. You are naming another party but telling that we are responsible.
You were part of the same People's
You
Front.
were part of the People's Front till a few days ago,
We
Mr. Bardhan.
communicated immediately to Mr. Narayanan. I am not saying the President, because he was at that time contacted as a nominee. We contacted him and told him that the People's Front partner, Mr. Mulayam Singh Yadav, though his nominee said that we stand like a rock behind you. That was the language used also at the press briefing that took place later on by him. That he has backed out. We told him.
Okay, so fair enough. Right through it appears all three of you in your own way have used some cloak and dagger politics when it comes to choosing your representative for the Rashtrapati.
But I neither see the cloak nor the dagger in what we
Sorry?
are doing. What is it?
Oh, there's no cloak, no dagger. In the manner in which you went to President Narayanan, in the manner in which you...
The manner after Alexander's name was floated like that, and having rescinded the name of Krishnakant, what alternative is left?
Okay, we'll take a break. We'll get in more questions. After the break, Rajiv Pratap Rudy to give the government's defense on the election of the President.
Numbers of foregathered in every Congress house. And in New Delhi, the Constituent Assembly is in session. Babu Rajendra Prasad, the President of the Constituent Assembly, during his speech, had this to say: I want, on behalf of this Assembly, to assure all the countries of the world that we wish to be friends with them. We hold no enmity against anyone. And the flag of India, our flag, the tricolour, is unfurled. The Constituent Assembly rises and stands in silence. The hands of the clock move their way towards midnight. All India is expecting.
Dr. Rajendra Prasad to Dr. Abdul Kalam, the changing face of the Indian presidency. In this round, we are going to focus on the criteria for choosing a president. So, Rudy, it's your turn. Your party chose Dr. Kalam in the end. Criteria for choosing him, criteria for choosing a president.
If we go into the Constitution, then Article 52 to 62 defines how you need to have a president, why you need to have a president, and the process of election. Going on the wider spectrum, we have had presidents in this country who have been philosophers, who have been from the philosophers, vice chancellors. We have had presidents who have come from a very rural background. Now this time, when we talk about consensus, we floated certain names. Certain names were in consensus. It was not coming through. So, first time in Indian history, I repeat, for the first time in Indian history, the president's selection has been depoliticized. A man with a merit, a man who is an Indian, a man who is a nationalist, a man about whom the whole country feels a sense of pride. This is the first time the BJP and the NDA government has brought forth a proposition which has given a vision of the right perspective of the president, which we hold in the highest esteem, who is the custodian of our constitution, who is to be respected what he holds after the constitution, and that is an emblem. And he is the person, a man who is to sell railway newspapers at the railway station in Rameshwaram. He would come as the nuclear scientist, as a profile for the country. It's a sense of pride for each and every Indian today, and that has been felt by all the journalists, the friends in media, the people of this country, the surveys. What more do you want? What more do you want as a president in this country today?
Okay, they've depoliticized the president by making Dr. Kalam rags to riches story, symbol of national pride.
That seems to be the only criteria that he's speaking of.
What more
but
do you
if that
want in a nation?
Now let me please answer. Now let me tell you that Dr. Radhakrishnan was not a politician. And it's not my claim, you see, that there should be only politicians. But there is a difference. That great philosopher had a training also as an ambassador before he became president. Then for 5 years he was the vice president before he became the president. That is what I mean by saying that he who becomes the president need not be a politician, but should have at least some knowledge about political affairs.
Excuse me for saying that. People in this country who cannot get elected to parliament are the leaders of political parties. It is true in this country today. So we cannot have a definition being established like that. I'm sorry to say that.
What is the
you want to
definition that he's talking about?
I'm saying that there are people who do not get elected to parliament, who do not go for elections. They head political
They can
parties.
become presidents
Yes.
even.
So that is what I am saying. You want to fix up a yardstick or a criteria for the president. President should be a choice for the nation, reflecting the nation, reflecting the vision, the view and the feelings of the country.
President should be a person who may not be a politician, I agree with this, but who should be at least aware of the constitutional obligations.
Oh,
Who should be aware? No, let me finish it.
A
What is
man
this?
who has headed this country, has been given a Bharat Ratna, is not aware of the Constitution of India, and it's something we
Have I
must
said
be-
that? Constitutional obligations and
And he would not,
responsibilities.
a man who has been the main nuclear head of the country,
Several
he does not
people have
understand the constitutional obligations on
Several
it. I am
eminent
aghast. I do
personalities
not.
have been given Bharat Ratna, including
you want-
Bismillah Khan.
You're saying Bismillah, if the criteria was Bharat Ratna, then you should give it to Bismillah Khan. Bismillah Khan can be president just as well as...
If Bharat Ratna is
No,
the criteria.
It was
We are getting perhaps too mixed up with names and personalities. If you talk of the qualities of a president, it's a really difficult question. You need to have a person of integrity, of stature, somebody who can be described as a conscience keeper of the country, somebody who is a friend, philosopher and guide, a statesman-like figure. Now obviously you can't get a person with all these. The Congress party has ultimately supported. He was not our first choice, nor indeed was Mr. Dr. Kalam the first choice of the ruling party. So at the end of the day, we have to see, we have supported his candidature. Our first choice remained till the very end, Mr. Narayanan. We found that there is nobody as good as his candidate. But in his absence, we found that Dr. Kalam is an acceptable candidate. And therefore you have to do with the best that is available.
Okay.
He
is
certainly not an inapposite or inappropriate candidate.
Aarti.
No, but I'd like you to define your criteria. You've swung from an ex-bureaucrat turned governor, like Alexander, to a man who's been a politician all his life, like Krishan Kant, to a man who's a nuclear scientist. Now, what is the common strand that runs through the three of them?
Exactly. Now, if this is what is exactly consensus? If X was not agreeable, Y was not agreeable, Z was a proposition which was acceptable
X
to
was
all.
agreeable.
So if Sachin
So
Tendulkar,
why not?
If Sachin Tendulkar was the
this
only
change has
name,
taken place, it is for a welcome signal. Why?
Let's hear a question.
no, but if Sachin Tendulkar was the only name on which you could have evolved a consensus, would you have gone for Sachin Tendulkar
you
as
are mixing up
president?
things. I'm not talking. You cannot.
You said
the
consensus. So obviously
consensus was a
has become your
proposition
main
moved.
criteria.
Where does it start? The moment this proposal was moved, one of the components, one of the supporting partners comes openly and says, yes, he is the right choice. Now that was the time when the People's Front, the so-called People's Front,
I am
which
glad
was
that he has
completely
become fond of Mulayam Singh now.
no, it's
I'm
not
glad.
a question of Mulayam Singh. It was a consensus
I
being
wish
built
him joy
up.
with Mulayam
One of the
Singh.
propositions came from Mulayam Singh and they agreed. It was the time for them to have
No, but why
thought
don't-
about
why
that
aren't-
post and come forward.
Why aren't
Why
all
did
of you
they
being
fail?
honest, particularly you, Mr. Rudy, at the end of the day, when you chose Dr. Kalam, how important was the fact that he's a Muslim and you were trying to recover from the image of your party and your government which was tarnished by Gujarat? Be very honest about it. Was it just a token Muslim that you were looking for who would be acceptable more or less
Look,
to the Congress?
Mr. Kalam is a Veena playing Muslim who is going to become the first president of this kind. Now, if you want to tag it to Gujarat, if you want to say, yes, give us the credit if you want to give us that credit. Why are you scared in saying? But you want to say that we are pro-Hindu, we have proved it to the country that we are nationalists first, and Mr. Kalam is not recognized in this country. It will hurt Mr. Kalam if you recognize him as a Muslim. He is the first order nationalist. He is the country's pride, and
So
I
the fact
think
that he was a Muslim was never a criteria.
absolutely not. But if you want to attribute it, we will not give it away. We will not give it away. But then we have to give. We will not make Mr. Kalam a Muslim. He belongs to the nation. He would be the next president, and I think it would not be right to mince words
I'm
today.
sorry to interrupt you, but
Sir.
the way you're talking as if you're relating the script of a Hindi film, We're not playing Muslim, strong nationalist, missile maker of the
when you
missile.
talk about
May
Mr.
I ask
Kalam
you
as a
question?
Muslim,
May
I did
ask
not
you-
mention.
I want to ask you a question.
I did not say he was a
Please,
Muslim. This was a
Hear
question
my
raised.
question. Please hear my question, Mr.
Anyway,
Rudy.
I am prepared
Do
to agree with him on that
do you
point.
realize that what you people have done in the process to the institution of the Prime Minister? You brought him almost to the brink where there would have been two candidates in the fray, neither of his choice. And today he settled with a candidate who is not originally of his choice. This has never happened in the history of India. a president assuming office who is not the first choice of the Prime Minister.
I don't think anything would have emanated without the consensus of the Prime Minister. I don't think this would be attributed to the Prime Minister that he's not his choice.
Ask you something else. Please get the spirit of my question.
Yes.
My question is that for the first time in the history of India, there would be a president occupying the Rashtrapati Bhavan who is not the original choice of the Prime Minister of this country. Under the constitutional scheme of things, Mr. Singhvi may like to help you.
Yes.
They are two inseparable twins.
Yes, if we had, the question is, this was the time when we talked that we have to keep up the post of the president. We try to build up a consensus. In the process of building up a consensus, sacrifices have to be made. If the Prime Minister
the first sacrifice was made by the PM who wanted Krishnakant.
Okay, so
no, I would not be in a position to comment on things.
Mr. Rudy,
what in aggregate we have
you've
seen
gone
is
on
the
and
best
on about
choice
one
for the
word
country.
consensus. We're going to take a break and look at that factor after that. Is it necessary to have a president only by consensus? What should be the process for choosing a president? After a break.
चंद्रशेखर सत्य निष्ठा से प्रतिज्ञा करता हूं कि मैं विधि द्वारा
I, Rajiv Gandhi,
do solemnly affirm
that
I will bear true faith and
Gyani Zail Singh swearing in Rajiv Gandhi more than a decade ago. We are looking at Indian presidents. Have political parties devalued the office of president? Mr. Abhishek Singhvi, let's look at 2 points in this section. The process of electing a president, since everyone is talking of consensus A, and B, a point that Mr. Bardhan raised that someone who becomes president must know the constitution. 2 points.
On the first point, I think the words consensus, the words contest have to be necessarily contextual. They're not in the air, they're not abstract. Now, since '89, for the first time in this country, you have this era of coalition politics. You have for the first time in this country a ruling party, the BJP, ruling in less than 3 or 4 states. You have a large number of states ruled by the opposition parties, including the Congress, or indeed by other elements of the NDA. In that situation, I think the pre-election process requires a higher degree of consultation, a higher participatory process. And I want to pinpoint that because we cannot change the electoral process. Article 54 prescribes constitutionally the electoral process for the president. That's a matter of a constitutional amendment. If it is to be a contest, that has to be followed. But in the process prior to that, leading up to the nomination, there is no reason why, in the current reality of the electoral situation, you should not have greater participation. Why, for example, was it not possible for Mr. Vajpayee, for Rajiv's party, to propose a panel and say, look, let's try if we can have a consensus on this panel. 1, 2, 3, any of them. If not, we don't shirk away from a contest. But look at the process. The process starts with the unilateral thrusting and imposition of a name. And we're not talking of personalities, but of the process. Participation, transparency, exchange of views, consultation, these can all be inbuilt into the pre-constitutional process without any legislation.
So the government should not thrust a name down the opposition.
And on Mr. Bardhan's second point, very briefly, I agree that a president's persona has to be holistic. Certainly, awareness and some knowledge of the constitutional process is a crucial element of that persona. But I would not say that a person who is not well versed, who is not a lawyer or who is not a jurist is devoid of that persona. Holistically, if a person either has it or has the capacity to gain it, then he is a person who should be able to deal with constitutional matters.
Mr. Bardhan, that's the point. Why are you why are you objecting to Dr. Kalam on that point?
No,
surely as someone who is
not
in public life, he will have some idea of the constitution.
No, moreover, there will be the Attorney General to help him. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that basically he should be aware of it. Basically, he should also be aware of all the political issues that are there in the country, and they are very divisive issues. Incidentally, I must say that I fully support what he has said. The issue of consensus has arisen particularly in the last few years, because the country has a fractured verdict now. There are coalition governments. The monopoly of power of one party does no longer exist.
And you believe that this government doesn't believe in consensus?
It doesn't. It has tried nothing for consensus. Nothing has been attempted.
Rajdeep, what I want to say, the process which he said is faulty is a process which brings a lot of shame to the entire process. Now, if anyone has to deeply analyze, and my senior journalist friends are here, it was nothing to do with the selection of the president. It was more of politics. Now you ask me how. There could have been a possibility that there may not have been a consensus on any particular candidate within the NDA. That could be a possibility. What they do, they take an advantage of that situation, rush to the president, make up a united front, and say they try to impose the candidate.
Much later, by the way.
No, I'm telling you.
Point of time.
Basically, if it was all a consensus, they rush and they try to see, because they wanted to destroy the NDA and say that it is because one of the leaders, one of the coalition partners said, the fall of this government will start the day the president election begins. That is that was the manifesto. Yes, the Rashtriya Janata Dal, a part of your front, that chief had mentioned that the downfall of NDA will start. Let me complete it. Now they had that big ploy. We definitely changed our candidate, or consensus was built up, Mr. Kalam's name. Now the very moment it happens, the Kalam missile obliterated the People's Front. Completely.
So that was the missile.
Let me just intervene here for one thing.
Completely obliterated.
So was that the aim? Was that the aim to
what to do?
Okay, Mr. Rudy, was that the aim?
Singh ran away.
Mr. Bardhan, do you believe the aim of Mr. Rudy was to show the divisions within the People's Front, as well as to push the Congress on the back foot?
And it took 48 hours for the Congress to respond, and now they are left is left alone.
Give me one opportunity of saying.
He says the left is left alone.
So many
no, there's no politics.
RJD is no part of the People's Front. RJD nominee was not there when we went to the Mr. Narayanan.
Answer his question.
RJD may have made some comments
somewhere. He believes that Kalam's selection has exposed the divisions within your group.
Perhaps that was the intention.
Can I respond to that? I think what Rajiv has said is belied by the events itself. He's forgetting the sequence.
Now you said
Mr. Narayanan,
the fact has been exposed.
Let me complete. Mr. Narayanan was approached well after unilaterally Dr. Alexander's name came. 1. 2. Despite Mr. Narayanan's candidature, we converged on Krishnakant, and his name was again reiterated when Krishnakant was jettisoned.
So they were playing double politics. Narayanan and Krishnakant, bringing the festive house in politics.
We are not in the game of firing missiles, springing surprises, or playing politics. Who is playing politics? You are claiming to fire missiles. You are claiming to divide parties.
Okay, let's get questions. Yeah.
Your leader approached Mr. Narayanan and formally requested him to contest before the NDA had officially announced Mr. Alexander.
That's not right. That's not right.
All right.
You may be technically right. I'm sorry. You may be technically right. It was public knowledge that Dr. Alexander's name is the name of the NDA. We are not here on formalities and technicalities.
But Mr. Singhvi, could you...
Well, after that, and we found no consensus, no attempt at consultation, that we went to Mr. Narayanan. And we meaning, we and Mr. Bardhan's party.
But what was your problem?
Well after that.
Sir, there has been a question raised that what was your problem with Mr. Alexander? Was it the fact that Mr. Again, it comes to the fact that was it because Mr. Narayanan is Mr. Alexander is a Christian, and you were worried if you had a Christian president, and Sonia Gandhi may find it difficult to become Prime Minister? I mean, let's be very honest about these issues. Here is someone who has served Congress governments, and you had a problem with him.
Let me give you a straight honest answer. I think it's a very important question and requires a straight answer. Number one, I don't think I should answer the question the way it is put, because we are now talking of a constitutional functionary in a constitutional office, that of the governor. So I do not want to demean any personalities. Having said that, nevertheless, let me attempt to answer your question. We took a stick view. We did see the entire career of Mr. Alexander. We do not agree with his policies, including indeed the very significant, what we call a masterly inaction on the Sri Krishna report.
This is a person who has served several Congress governments, including Indira Gandhi, whose face is larger than life at every Congress meeting.
His governorship and his actions and his masterly inaction happened well after that service.
Okay.
We are entitled as a national political party, after detailed consultation, to take our view. We did that. And this is the upfront answer, although I must repeat that as a governor now, he is entitled to full respect, which is what I would like to show to him, and it's not a matter of bringing him into the public domain.
By the same token, Mr. Narayanan's candidature, which you were pushing, how much of it, particularly when you originally made him president and pushed for him, was the fact that he was a Dalit and you wanted a Dalit as a president? I ask this because have you not reduced the office to tokenism? They pushed Mr. Kalam because he's a Muslim, a so-called nationalist Muslim. They want to push a candidate whom they think will fit in within their Congress framework. You want to push in a candidate who fits in within your ideological framework.
Before he became president, for 5 years he was vice president. So therefore, you see, in the most normal course...
But you want a president who fits in within your ideological framework.
No, but I am saying this. Since you are asking,
and yet you want consensus.
Since you are asking this question, as far as Muslim president is concerned, there have been 2 Muslim presidents even before this. But if you are asking about a Dalit president, let me tell you, there has been no Dalit president except Narayana.
No, so the question to all of you though is, do you want consensus, but you want a president who fits in within your ideological framework? How are both possible?
Permit me, Rajdeep, let us just see, we itemize the qualities of a president. A man of some stature, integrity, objectivity, impartiality, statesmanlike, conscience keeper, friend, philosopher and guide. If you think carefully, the fact that we supported Mr. Narayanan, where does Mr. Narayanan fail on those counts?
Where does
he's been an excellent president.
I like to.
He's
where
does
Mr. Kalam not fit into this, number one?
Figure.
No, he asked the question of Mr. Narayanan. I'm answering Mr. Narayanan.
Countries.
Okay, fair enough. We've got all your 3 points of view. Vinod Sharma has many more questions. We are going to take a short break, come back with many more questions.
नारायणन
ईश्वर की शपथ लेता हूँ कि
ईश्वर की शपथ लेता हूँ कि a few days before his martyrdom, Gandhi
Last Indian president there being sworn in, Mr. K.R. Narayanan. Has that institution now got totally devalued by all that we've seen in the last few weeks? Vinod Sharma.
Mr. Abhishek Singhvi, I'll expect you to answer this question as an expert of the Constitution, not as a congressperson. Don't you think that the whole entire episode, the way it unfolded before the people of India, has totally devalued and put into the dust the institution, the high institution of the president? First, the Congress president goes and calls on President Narayanan, and information is leaked that she's gone and formally asked him to contest. Then the president calls on him, the Prime Minister calls on him, and the information is leaked that he has told him that he cannot be their candidate. Before that, information is leaked that P.C. Alexander could be the candidate of the ruling party. Thereafter, Mr. Krishan Kant's name is disclosed. Don't you think all these institutions have been devalued? And don't you also think that you should have shown the generosity of allowing them to elect their candidate?
I thought you prefaced your question by saying I should answer the constitutional law and not as a congressman, but you put in a Congress element in your question.
Yes, sir.
But nevertheless, let me answer. Rajdeep put that question at the beginning of the program. I said yes, the answer is an unqualified yes. Perhaps the word may be too strong, totally devalued, but certainly the sentiment is right. But primarily and almost entirely by the action of the ruling party. Let me very respectfully explain why. The Prime Minister and the NDA's decision to field Mr. Alexander was public knowledge after a number of days of press speculation. It may not have been, as Aarti rightly says, formally announced, but we all know that it was well known. Well after that, consultation started between us, entire within the intra-Congress, then with like-minded parties like the Communists, and Mr. Bardhan will bear that out. Well after that, we approached Mr. Narayanan, and there's nothing secret about it. It was in fact the Prime Minister who approached Mr. Narayanan subsequently and leaked the fact that they have told Mr. Narayanan that they will not support him.
What was your problem?
Now you tell me who has devalued the process.
Mr. Rudy, what was your problem with...
But you are blaming the wrong party.
Mr. Rudy, what was your problem with Mr. Narayanan?
Why this has happened this time, I'll explain it. Now, this is the first time, because mostly it was the Congress rule government. They had the majority voters. The Electoral College comprises of MLAs and members of parliament. Now, they had the majority all throughout. They could field their candidate X, Y and Z, no debate. Maybe because of this coalition politics, maybe because of the state governments which are different. It was a necessity, and it is always should be a prerogative of the ruling coalition partner, of the ruling leader of the coalition partner, to select a candidate and propose it. Now, they took advantage of this situation where there were several political parties, there could be aberrations in between, and they created a situation. Otherwise, the best would have been Congress should have accepted any proposal put forward by the NDA alliance. Why didn't they do that? If they were so concerned, all throughout they had the majority of the Congress. They brought presidents who were respectable, not respectable. It cannot be debated. Now, in this situation, whose duty was first? Whether they should have accepted what the opposition say, or whether we should. This is for the debate.
Mr. Rudy, Mr. Bardhan himself has said that there was a consensus on Mr. Krishan Kant. It's you who shot down the consensus.
I say the prerogative of the first choice should always lie with the ruling party.
It was their choice.
That is what I'm saying.
It was your choice. You approached the Congress with Krishan Kant's name, and there was a consensus.
This is exactly, there was not a consensus which you may talk, but there was not a consensus, and that is why this is what we are saying, that the party which has a prerogative.
Rajiv is absolutely right. A ruling party does have the prerogative of making the first move, which is why our objection that the first move was not in a consultative participatory manner, but by unilaterally proposing Mr. Alexander. The second move was again a convergence of Krishna Kant. There again his party.
So you would have liked a panel of names to be given to you first?
Certainly, you see, as I said, prior to the election, what is in this, and Mr. Rudy ignores the fact that we are talking post-89, as Mr. Bardhan said, in a fractured consensus situation with most states ruled by non-BJP, non-NDA governments. In that situation, what prevented the BJP from coming up with a panel of names, discussing with all of us, and for a contest?
Look here,
I
said earlier also.
You can treat all these.
There was a time when there was monopoly of power of the Congress, both at the center and in most of the states. At that time, the Congress could put anyone and get him elected. That's a different matter. They never cared for consensus and nobody talked about it. But today, you do not have the monopoly of power. You have only rule in 3 states. And even here also, you have a coalition of so many parties. So therefore, you have to be careful. Even then I agree that it is the Prime Minister and the ruling party who have to take the initiative. And I told you that I am talking of as early as May 20th when I met the Prime Minister.
Mr. Bardhan, before we go to the audience round, we want to ask you, you nominated Lakshmi Sehgal, all of 87-year-old Lakshmi Sehgal, as your candidate for the presidency. Do you think 87-year-old Lakshmi Sehgal is also the appropriate choice for president? You have problems with Dr. Kalam, surely, isn't that the height of tokenism again?
May I tell that I do not see the difference between 70 and 80, because the others are also above 70.
No, most Indian politicians mature at 80, that's true.
If the choice was between a person of your age and 87, I could have understood it. So don't make much of it. But I can tell you that that lady is in full health, is in full vigor. Every month she undertakes, you see, a journey to some other place for attending some program, and in her own city of Kanpur, where she is a practicing doctor, she attends her dispensary every morning from 9 to 2 p.m.
So age is not a factor. 87-year-old is fine.
Well, 87-year-old is Jyoti Basu also.
Right. Well, politicians like good wine seem to get better with age. So perhaps that's why Mr. Bardhan has decided that Lakshmi Sehgal is their choice. After the break, we'll get in audience questions. Welcome back. Have recent events devalued the office of the president? That's been the debate on the big fight. Let's get in audience questions. Who's the people's choice for president? Yes, gentlemen. Yeah.
Why don't we give chance to the new one, younger people with younger
ideas? So you want to start where we left off in the last section. Mr. Bardhan said that age is not a criteria. Do you think we should have younger people?
I certainly think the general approach should be to try to have somewhat younger people. Of course, the word younger is relative, because when you talk of a president who's younger, it's still in the late 60s, 70s.
In politics, you become young at 70.
Yeah, because you also, for a president, you have to have a bit of a statesman-like father figure, which is not possible before that, but certainly. But quite frankly, I think it is difficult also to find names like that today. If you go down our list of criteria which we've itemized, there are not that very many people in the early 70s fulfilling that.
Okay,
that's a candid position.
Okay, yes, the gentleman there. Yes, what's your question? Ask it.
My question is just Mr. Vardhan. I want to ask you why such a hue and cry is made on making Dr. Kalam as the President of India, when Rajiv Gandhi can become the Prime Minister of India without any political experience. Why not Dr. Kalam, who has been in such a high status, and he has been such an educated man?
Okay, let's get audience. How much of the audience feel that Dr. Kalam is the right choice? Those who feel it's the right choice, put your hand up. That's about 70%. Mr. Bardhan, you'd probably lose a popular vote, not just the presidential election, but also the popular vote on the Kalam factor.
These are not the only people of India.
No, I appreciate
if you are talking of a popular vote.
Fair enough.
Yes.
Okay, the studio vote. Let's call it the studio vote.
This is a studio vote.
Yeah. But answer his question. Why?
Not the vote before the.
He says that why are you making Dr. Kalam's so-called inexperience in public life such a big factor?
He's an eminent personality. And I always recall, you see, the words of the Prime Minister, a Prime Minister, of course, of 79 years, who said, Jai Jawan, Jai Kisan, Jai Vigyan. I would like those who are great scientists to stick to that. Albert Einstein never wanted to become a president anywhere, or all the other scientists who are also great scientists. So let us have them in science.
Fair enough. Keep scientists in science. Yes, the lady at the back. Yes, ask your question.
Yes, rightly mentioned by Mr. Vardhan that Albert Einstein, Dr. Abdul Kalam is the second Einstein, probably an Einstein of India. We should be proud to have him at the highest office.
He's saying scientists should remain scientists. Why do they need to become
Why
president?
not? I think the best of brains should come to the highest office.
You think the best of people
yes,
from other...
the best of brains, I say, the best of brains.
Rajdeep,
Yes.
not only that,
Yes.
today what is Mr. Kalam doing? He's not making bombs. Today he is teaching the handicapped and the physically challenged. Today he is making programs for the people who are impaired of hearing. Today he is going out in the universities and teaching the young students. What is the left saying and destroying sanctity
And
of a
yet he
person?
was your
And
third choice. Yet Mr. Rudy, he was your
and
third
he was
choice.
not a
But
politician like
we'll-
us going
we'll-
around
okay,
making
sir.
political bhashan.
Okay,
And
the
that
young
is
man
not
there, yes.
acceptable
No, let me
to the
answer
left.
that question.
I think it is
Rajdeep.
most unfortunate.
You
Yeah,
see,
we'll take the question first, sir. Yes, ask your question.
Mr. Kalam was the head of he was the father of the nuclear program in India. How important a factor was that for his selection?
Mr. Rudy, you want to wave
Sure.
the nuclear flag through
No,
Mr.
it's
Kalam?
nothing to do with nuclear. He was the throne of our achievement. He gave the nation pride. He put us forth in the world forum and said that we have a capability. That was a genius with the country which we are all proud of.
Rajdeep,
You want to respond?
I
That
would
is not
like
an
to
issue
point
now,
out one
because
thing.
we have become nuclear power.
Okay,
we have that
let
asset.
Mr. Bardhan
but
respond.
as an
Mr. Rudy.
individual, you look at
I
Mr.
want to-
Kalam over the years. What? And he's never
Mr.
been
Bardhan
lying
wants to
like a
respond, Mr.
politician.
Rudy. Yeah.
I want to first of all remove one misapprehension. We have the greatest respect for Dr. Kalam. So let us not drag in that personality like that. I resent it. I would not like to be told that as if we are disrespecting him. But what I am saying is that Dr. Kalam has a specialization in a certain field. We are in this age not only of brains. Brains are working, you see, in a special field.
Sir, but is the President of India a specialized field?
No, it has a political field. It is a constitutional position, the highest constitutional position.
Okay, let's get, yes, the gentleman there, ask your question.
To all of the three panelists, and with due regard to Minister Rudy and with due regard to his repeated consensus word, the question posed to all of three: what do you think, Mr. Kalam is a consensus candidate or a imposed candidate? My question to the Mr. Singhal and Mr. Vardhan first.
You
before
want to
Kalam.
answer that because you've now supported Dr. Kalam. Is he basically a candidate imposed on you?
Why and how? Well, Mr. Kalam, Dr. Kalam was not the first candidate. He has been a candidate who emerged at the very end. On Tuesday, the 11th, for the first time, President K.R. Narayanan, who remained our first choice, emphatically our first choice, said no.
Okay,
we had authorized the Congress President to take a decision on her own. She could have decided on the 12th. We took 48 hours, less than 48 hours, to announce our decision yesterday on 13th, that in the available circumstances, we support Mr. Kalam because we cannot think of any better candidate.
Be very honest, Dr. Singhvi.
Yes.
Would you accept that it was impossible for you to reject Dr. Kalam because there is again the tokenism factor? You cannot reject a nationalist Muslim.
We believe that in the circumstances, there is no better available candidate after Mr. Narayan said no than Dr. Kalam.
One last question, the young man there. Yes, ask your question.
Rajdeep,
let the young boy
I
ask
have to
his question.
answer what he said.
No, let him answer his question.
me.
Yes, ask your question.
Actually, I just want to ask to Mr. Bardhan, isn't the left front opposing Dr. Abdul Kalam just because he is the NDA candidate, or what else? What is the problem?
That was the question which he asked. Dr. Kalam is a great man, but certainly he is not a consensus candidate for presidency. He is imposed as an NDA candidate. Others are now falling in line
he thinks
for
you
want
oppose,
of...
the young man there thinks you oppose for the sake of opposing sometimes.
Why? But what is so surprising about it? After all, the Constitution provides for election of president. Why then?
Okay, I'm afraid we are going to have to end the audience round. We're running almost completely out of time. One more section to go. We're going to ask all our panelists, if it was not Dr. Abdul Kalam, who would their choice for president have been? Also, who is their all-time favorite president? That's after a very short break. the Rashtrapati. That's what we're debating today on the big fight. We've got very little time, just enough for final questions. Aarti.
Well, having been through this sordid, unhappy experience that we've been through over the last few weeks, do you think that some kind of system should be evolved now so that next time around we don't have a repetition?
Mr. Rudy, are you ready for the panel system proposed by Dr. Singhvi and Mr. Bardhan? Both of them supported. Would you support it?
Any panel would not work for people like them who are ready to all. They are there just only to
about people like me.
So there is no question of panel. If there are left like that, and the people who keep staggering decisions like them, then you can never have any panel would work. Anyway.
So it's impossible to have a consensus. So you have to have
they are born to oppose. If they are in the opposition, they have to oppose. So it may be 10 minutes, it doesn't work.
This is very nice. It's shooting down a proposal before giving it a try and putting the blame on us.
Okay. Vinod Sharma.
I want to ask a question. Whose candidate is Kalam? Is it the TDP?
Nation's candidate
is it the NDA's TDPs or the opposition's TDPs? Which is
Mr. Kalam is the nation's candidate.
Does he not reflect the true federal spirit where two parties, which were regional parties, converged to project a candidate, and had you people looking around scurrying for shelter, the BJP and the Congress?
Is that true? Was he Chandrababu Naidu's original candidate?
Absolutely wrong. He was the nation's choice. There could be proposals earlier.
Naidu is not going to like it. Naidu may get angry with you, Mr. Rudy.
Well, the nation's choice was your third choice. But I'm going to ask all three of you very quickly, starting with you, Mr. Singhvi, your favorite all-time president?
K.R. Narayanan.
Why?
Well, you go down the list of all the criteria I mentioned. I can't today even, and I'd like the audience to, or you to say so, on which of those criteria is he faultable?
Okay, fair enough. K.R. Narayanan. Mr. Rudy, your favorite choice of president?
Could be, it would be Dr. Rajendra Prasad for me.
Dr. Rai,
but I would say, Rajdeep, this debate which you have initiated today is terrible. It's terrible, I can tell you. This debate should not have been there.
Well, the debate was caused by the politicians. You can't blame the media.
I feel hurt about it. We may be responsible, then you are still worse.
Okay, so fair enough. The media only mirrors what they see in their politicians. Mr. Bardhan, as the senior most person here, tell us your favorite choice of president.
You see, all have been very good presidents, but my favorite is K.R. Narayanan for two reasons. All the criteria that he said, apart from that, he's a very sensitive man, aware of the nation's problems, and within his constitutional limitations, he has the way of putting them across. When he
Fair enough. Well, we have to end it there, I'm afraid. That's it on the Big Fight today. Do email us, bigfight@ndtv.com, with your choice of who you think India's best president is and who should have been India's president. Thank you all very much for joining us on the Big Fight. Thank you.